Shedeur's been that. You guys just hadn't seen him because he was at HBCU and we were secluded. I guess no one had TVs and they didn't work out here in the television that we were playing on last year. But this is who he is. It don't matter where he came from. That's who that guy is. And his passion and his study habits and his commitment to excellence, it shows every weekend. I know a multitude of people, not you guys. You guys are family. You beautiful women are family. But people wait for him to fail. Like he can't keep this going. Yes, he can, because this is who he is.
You can go ahead. I can cut this out.
I was gonna say, and go up to Fort Collins because there's 3 scumbags I'd like you to pick up and bring down. 4.
We'll get it. 4. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna talk about some moms too, so I'm just telling you.
All right.
I'm pretty salty.
That should be the lead to our podcast right there. I don't know if I can set it up better than that. All right. Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, joined by football analyst William Gardner. A double overtime thriller at Folsom Field with Colorado coming out on top 43-35. As I posted after the game, William, this wasn't the performance the Buffaloes were hoping for, but they still found a way to finish conference play 3-0.
Well, I think it's I was thinking as I was getting ready for this, there are wins that feel like losses. This is one of them, but it's a win any way you cut it. And I don't think there's a lot of people that thought we'd be 3-0 at the end of non-conference play, but here we are. So I think we take that win. I think there's some things we take from it. I think I said before we started, I'm a little salty today. I'm gonna talk about some mamas. Gonna do it, and I had it's not just a game last night. About a month or two ago, I celebrated my niece's wedding for her, and got the photos back yesterday, and I ain't as thin as I think I am. So on that vein, let's carry on.
Okay. Yeah, it's good that you're going to go off the rails because I haven't slept yet. The game obviously was delayed initially, just a little bit of time. And then it was a really long first quarter. I think the first quarter was almost an hour long, and then double overtime. And this isn't specific to Coach Prime, but any coach takes a long time getting to the post-game press conference because you've got you got to address the team, and then you've got to deal with however many things to get ready for that press conference. Mike McIntyre used to have to just go and decompress for a while, and that was kind of out of control. But anyways, back to the point. I wasn't out of the post-game press conference till 2 a.m. I didn't get home until 5 a.m. And then it was time to just power through because you've got a real big boy job, and so your schedule only dictates that you have a certain availability. So I pulled an all-nighter. This could be the worst show we ever do. It could be the best show. I have no idea. I don't have history with lack of sleep doing this podcast, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think we didn't really prep for it. We're just really running off of I don't know. I got plenty to say. So
well, let's start with the legend of Shedeur Sanders. Because it grew last night.
Yeah. There's a lot of emotions that come out of that game. Let's start with this, though. What a day. What a crazy, crazy, crazy day to start with such a high, and maybe the highest point I've seen CU football in since the mid 90s, and all the being on the media all over the country and everything else, and such an exciting day, and just every little piece of CU football and Boulder celebrated, and then to go through that game and to have the ups and downs of that game, and to finish it the way it did, and seeing Travis Hunter in the hospital and all those kinds of things. There's a lot to digest, okay, and some of it I'm not handling all that great, but we'll talk about that a little bit too. But to see your title really put a smile on my face, the Legend of Shedeur, because man, that guy, that's almost all I have to say is that guy, because what a leader! What a guy to stay calm in the heat of the moment under pressure. And I got to tell you this: any team that's got Shedeur Sanders behind center's got a shot. I don't care who they're playing. So, 98 yards for that winning touchdown, and they got set back a couple of times on that drive too, and they still got it done. And Jimmy Horn Jr. with a hell of a play to make that touchdown, and guys coming through. And we're gonna have to get to Michael Harrison and do a show on him too, because we talked about the tight end position being a weakness. Well, not so far. We would not be 3-0 without that guy. So Shedeur Sanders hit his performance. If he ain't first in the Heisman, I don't even know why they give the award out, because what he did last night was even more impressive to me than what he did against TCU, because here the team was not firing on all cylinders, and he just picked them up and said, "We're going to do this," and that's what they did. So there are not enough superlatives that I can even express for Shedeur Sanders.
When Colorado got the ball back at their own 2-yard line, down 8 with 2:06 left, I was down on the field and I turned to Monica Costello, who works for the AP, and I said, he's going to drive him 98 yards and they're going to tie this thing up, aren't they? And she turned to me, no hesitation, and said, yep. And I have never covered a quarterback at Colorado. My beginning was in 2003, covering this program. I didn't get to cover Coy Detmer and Darian Hagan and Cordell Stewart and a lot of the greats of the past. Since I started covering this program, I wouldn't have felt that way about any other quarterback. And that's no knock on Sefo Lufau, who was an absolute warrior. Steven Montez had the physical gifts. We saw glimpses out of Cody Hawkins and Tyler Hansen, but to feel that this movie that you're a part of, and all Colorado fans are a part of this movie right now, you just know that it's going to go to script. And somehow they're going to pull it out. And now, had they made one more mistake down the stretch, man, they really pulled it close to that line, didn't they? I mean, there was they really pushed it to the edge.
Well,
on Saturday night.
Yeah, we've all seen the stereotypical football movies that Remember the Titans and things like that, where it's implausible, but you just feel what you feel when you watch it. And to watch it in real life, you just think to yourself, that had to be Hollywood scripted for that to happen. And the other thing I appreciate about Shedeur is I was going to say the other thing, but then 5-6 other things popped into my head, so I'm just going to just spit a few of them out. One of them is he don't back down to nobody, and he knows what he knows, and he believes what he believes. And if you're disrespecting him or his family or his team, he's going to step up in your face, and he doesn't care. And that's great, because the one moment I'm thinking about is after that scumbag from CSU, and that's the kind of way we're going to talk today. Put that cheap shot on Tyler
Don't go too in depth on that, because we got to spend a whole segment of this podcast on that.
But after that play, Shedeur walked right up, put face mask to that punk, and said, "Let's go." And the only reason that dude didn't get beat down is because all of his teammates came and saved him. And we'll talk more about that, because I'm going to tell you, CSU fan, see the face, walk away from it. Walk away from it. You, Jay Norvell, me and you, boy, I tell you what, we ever cross paths, you and me going to throw. So we better move on.
Coach Prime says this is what Shedeur has always done. There was no surprise factor for him. And certainly if you tuned in to Jackson State, you saw a lot of these type of comeback plays from Shedeur. Well, a lot of times they didn't have to come back, in this fashion, but he still was clutch in some of those big games that he had played in at Jackson State. Certainly has a clutch factor. As clunky as this game was offensively for Colorado, it's just crazy to me how talented Shedeur is. And you look at the final box score, and he's 38 of 47 for 348 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had 1 pick, and it was kind of a weird play where the ball was kind of in Jimmy Horn's hands, and it kind of got pulled away from Henry Blackburn, who, again, we'll get back to him later in this. But, yeah, that was an incredible performance, yet he's capable of so much more. And now some of the pieces around him need to get a little bit better in order for that to really show through, though.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I was there obviously and saw Cordell and uh, Darian Hagan play, and before them, Sal Nessie. Sal Nessie was the single best leader of men that I've ever known in my life, and it's not the same for me because I'm not playing with Shedeur, so I don't know him on that personal level. But he's the same. He's the same kind of thing. It's not always the talent and the feet and the arm that makes a great quarterback. It's really the talent up here and in your heart and how you respond to other people. And that's the kind of game that makes a team, that makes a program, because guys start to believe. And after this, nobody in that team is ever going to doubt that they can do it. And that's going to pay off down the road when you got guys that believe in what they're doing, and you build a bond with each other through things like this, and you have a natural leader in a guy like Shedeur that that's what you can't scout for when you're recruiting. You try, and yet I don't know, those are the kinds of things that you just don't know until you get somebody. It's like 10 years in the military, and you didn't know until everything went sideways who you could count on and who you could really trust and who was going to be there and lead you through those things. And I think this game was good for this team. I think, and I don't know if we're going to switch the gears here, but there's a lot of things that could be good coming out of this. And one of them is that they know they got a leader that they can count on.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support, but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. Let's go right to the beginning of the game. In fact, before the game, when there was once again pre-game drama. Shedeur Sanders, I asked him about that. He said, quote, honestly, to me, they just wanted attention and to go viral. That's all it really was. You saw Travis Hunter really, firing up the student section. It felt like a rivalry game, big time by the time that game kicked off, which is the good part of, I know you're going to go after a bunch of guys at CSU, but as much as you're frustrated with them, and certainly the Blackburn hit is egregious, but the build up to this game, that's good for college football.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. It's hard for me to separate the one from the other right now. It's still a little bit raw to watch it, and it's not just Blackburn. It's the cheap shot the cheap shot that the guy put on Shiloh on the pick six deep into the end zone. It got damn near could have put him into the goalpost. It was the cheap shot that scumbag Cameron, who ought to be arrested, put on Shedeur. It was the cheap shot that other scumbag who ought to be in jail today put on Travis Hunter. And they just did that throughout the game. So to me, Jay Norvell's a bad human being, and his mom's a bad human being too, because she raised him to be what he is. And he's the one that set the tone for this, and he's the one that taught this team how to play that way, and they play like he is. He's a small, little, whiny man who can't stand up and be a man, and that's the kind of team that he has right now, and that's the kind of the game that they played. The difference between him and Prime are so wide and legion, it's unbelievable. But Coach Prime goes through life with joy, I think is the one word that comes to my mind anytime I watch him and look at him. Whereas a little whiny, so-and-so like Jay Norvell goes through looking for excuses why he's not getting treated fairly. So, is it good for college football to have those kinds of a game? I suppose so. I don't know. They're a lesser team. And here's to you, Norvell. You got beat by a better team. You got beat by a better coach. You got beat by a better man. So off you go now.
Is your issue with him the comment about the penalties? Is that what you're kind of alluding to there?
Well, it's also look at the little whiny girl comment that he made about the sunglasses and the hat. What is that? Who
See,
cares?
yeah.
And then and you can't separate one from the other because they're both come from the same little whiny bitch place. That's who he is as a human being. So, he's going to make that comment about the hat and glasses because it's petty and silly and stupid, because he's a petty and silly and stupid guy. And he's going to come out after that performance by his dirtbag team and whine about the penalties. Bottom line is, you got whooped at the end of the game. When it came down to it, our guys wanted to win, your guys didn't.
I thought Pat McAfee had a great comment on that, and he said, well, my mom taught me that if you're a good person, you can be who you are, and it shouldn't offend people. It's such a superficial thing to point out.
Well, and I think the reason I go there is because Shedeur hit it right on the head. The whole purpose of Norvell's comment earlier in the week was just what Shedeur said, to get their spotlight, to get their 15 minutes of fame, and he got it. I don't think he came out of it looking very good, but I don't know what was going on down there on the field before the game, or who started what or said what, but it's very clear that Jay Norvell. Well, I think he taught his players to be like that, because he certainly acts like that, on a national stage. And the thing that's sad about him is he doesn't even have the guts to stand up and accept and face who he is. He's got to say stuff like, well, those words were meant for my team. Shut up. If they were meant for your team, say them in the locker room. You meant them to be on national TV so you can get your 15 minutes of fame because you resent Deion Sanders getting something that you're not getting. So, and then to come out okay, well, we better.
Well, real quick, I do want to mention that, the fact that CSU was penalized 17 times for 187 yards. If they were a little bit more disciplined, they win the football game on Saturday night. But Jay Norvell had this to say, quote, obviously we had too many penalties. I can't even speak about it. It's so ridiculous. It's a shame because a lot of those penalties took away a lot of great efforts from our kids. I've never seen such a lopsided game penalty-wise. I do give Colorado credit. They're a very good football team. The last part there is kind of lame after what you just said prior to that. Well, I mean, I don't know Jay Norvell, so I'm not going after him. This was certainly an interesting week. Comments made by him, the penalties thing. I mean, I haven't had a chance to rewatch the game, but had a tablet there and was kind of watching replays, and it certainly seemed like all those penalties were legit.
Yeah, I mean, that's they I try to watch it a little bit again on recording, but anytime you look at a game, there are going to be calls that are questionable, but most of the things that they were calling out there, frankly, they weren't calling enough. How that Blackburn kid didn't get ejected from the game is beyond me. But the thing is, they kept doing the same dirty things over and over again, and they didn't fix them and change them and get better at it. So CU made their mistakes for sure, and I don't know. I think. I don't know how many times we got a false start on our receivers, and we're gonna have to fix that thing. But that's an easily fixable thing, and I think that was some miscommunication as far as not getting set on time. It wasn't like a jump, and then but they were an undisciplined team, and it showed in the way they played, particularly on defense. That everybody focuses on the two hits to Shedeur and Travis, but man, what that guy did to Shiloh halfway through the end zone, he knew where he was, and he did that, and he threw a punch over the top of him. Yet that's not trying to punch the ball free. That's just a frustrated punk taking out his frustrations. So they play the way they are, and I've been saying this, for 40 years in football. Teams play the way they are coached to play. CSU played the way that dirtbag teaches them to play. So don't stand up there and say is about, and well, here's another weaselly statement he made. Oh, well, this is just a rivalry, so that's to be expected. No, you didn't see us doing it. It was just as much a rivalry for us. We didn't do it. So stand up and be a man and say, your guys are dirtbags, and I taught them to be that way, and my mama taught me to be that way.
So Jay Norvell is not on the Gardner family Christmas card list, huh?
As somebody said on the board last night, Tom Osborne will die peacefully knowing he's not number one on the list anymore.
Wow, okay.
To which I responded, honest to God, I thought Tom was dead.
Now, have you ordered your pair of Prime shades yet?
No, not yet. I haven't had a chance to do that. I'm not
All
cool
right.
enough. I'm sure. I'm not thinking, but we'll see.
Don't sell yourself short, and we could pull it off on a Zoom here in the future.
Yeah, right. That'd be fun.
All right. Van Wells out at center. Hank Zielinskis, a true freshman, in. I'm curious to get your take on the offensive line's performance. I know that on social media, they were taking a lot of flack. And to be honest with you, until you can go back and rewatch the game, it's kind of hard to have a firm analysis. But certainly, Shedeur Sanders, again, for the second straight week, was just hit too many times.
Yeah, and I think it's a I don't know. It's hard to say a definitive thing because a game there's so many plays and there's so many things that quite frankly there was a lot of things the offensive line did right. That 98-yard drive, they played perfect, and I don't know. At the end of the day, you got to give them credit for standing up when it counts. I think they had some troubles with what CSU was doing. CSU would overload one side, and they didn't really have an answer for that. We have not yet in 3 games got our running game going, and I'm not convinced that we have the horses at guard. Quite frankly, I think we do at center with Wells. And I got to say this: nobody needs to pile on Hank Zielinskis, man. This is his 3rd game out of high school.
Yeah.
So let's not that kid's going to be one heck of a player because you know what? In the larger scheme of things, taking into account where he is in his career, he played a pretty decent game. Okay, he's not going to get a high grade out of it, and yeah, they exploited him to some extent. But man, that's a kid who stepped up and did what he needed to do, and it kind of throws off your line calls a little bit, and you got to try those guards got to try to help him out and what have you. But I couldn't help wonder last night what we would look like up front last night, with Van Wells and Tyler Brown in there,
Yeah.
And that's the game of football. You put your next guy in there, and I'll tell you what, we put our next guy in there and we won. So God bless, let's move on. And Bill O'Boyle's got some work to do. Again, without spending an entire Sunday studying that film, it's hard to have definitive things to say. The one that really stands out is that 98-yard drive. And I got to tell you, the offensive tackles looked fantastic on that drive. Clearly there were problems at other points in the game. I don't think we were getting the kind of push. Well, it's not so much people always, it seems to me they watch the game and they say, well, the offensive line stinks and they didn't do this and they didn't do that. And they got pushed around. We didn't get pushed around. Okay. On either side of the ball. In fact, our defensive line, I watched Shane Coates beat up that center pretty badly most of the game. So we didn't get pushed around, but what happened was we didn't get up to the second level and seal off their linebackers on the run game, I think is the problem we had. So we'd get past the line of scrimmage, but the linebacker be right there. Nobody's in his face. And by the same token, for our defense, the defensive line did a pretty good job. And then our linebackers were missing the hole or missing the tackle in the hole. So it's always, I don't know, I think people always say, oh, the lines, that they're to blame. And I don't know, people are going to say, well, you just always reflexively defend the lines. And maybe that's how I watch the game. And maybe that's why I say that, but there's more.
Well, let me cut you off, William. It's not necessarily where the blame needs to go, but if you just look at the bottom line here is through 3 games, through non-conference play, Colorado's opponents have a total of 16 sacks, while Colorado's defense only has 5. Well, however that ratio needs to change, it needs to change as you're getting into these games against Oregon and USC. It's not necessarily one unit's fault, but just as a whole, that trend needs to change here going forward.
Well, I mean, and that's what I wrote down in my notes from last night was, we don't have a running game and we don't have a pass rush. And that's, kind of par for the course for the last 10 years for CU. And it's a little bit disappointing. And we thought that would be different. And maybe it'll change when we get a couple of these other running backs.
The pass rush looked great against Nebraska. So, it's just, I would say outside of the fact that Colorado's running game has just not seemed to work much at all. I mean, even in the TCU game, the plays to Dylan Edwards were primarily through the air, or technically passes. Every other part of Colorado's team has been a little bit up and down, but there's been some real encouraging signs out of pretty much every part of it's just the ground game that really just has never shown much of a glimmer so far.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that they're still not calling the kind of plays that I saw from the film of Kent State last year. So, I don't know to what extent Lewis has changed his philosophy, or maybe he feels like he can't run the ball, so he's not calling those plays and doesn't have the horses up front. I don't know. Again, I don't have the time to break that film down and look at it really carefully, but it is quite clear to me after watching last night's game that we still need, you know, Coach Prime talked about we need 7 or 8 dogs, right? And almost we need those. I hate to point fingers, but we're not strong at the guard position, and we're not getting the push out of those guys, and they're the guys that have the big man over them. And then we're going to have to find those SEC caliber big defensive tackles that can really dominate a front, and we still don't have that. Our Alfred Williams type or all the kind of guys we've had at outside linebacker at CU, and nobody's stepped up and really done that. I think, we did have the one good game from Dominic and Taj Alston against Nebraska, but one game isn't a trend. One game is a game. And so that's also one of the things I would tell people about this game. One of the things I've learned in 40 years in football is there's not a lot you can derive from any one game, because team can play well, team can play bad. Who knows? It's what you do over the course of a season and trending that matters. But there's no question that we definitely need to get better on the
Jordan
front line.
Seaton, that kid from IMG Academy that was visiting, holy moly, that kid looks like he should be starting in the NFL right now. His body is massive. That would be a big get.
Yeah, well, you look at those, and I think you can develop an offensive line without necessarily getting all 4 and 5 stars, but those guys certainly make it a lot easier, and we certainly, we are, we brought in some nice defensive linemen, but I don't know that we brought in any that are difference makers. And I think, go ahead.
No. Finish your point, because I'm going to move to a different topic.
Well, I think that there back when we cleared house after spring ball, and then there were people on the board who were expressing concern about, can we bring in a complete defensive line between now and next year? And I tell you what, they were mocked and made fun of, and the people mocking and make fun of them need to apologize, because you were wrong. Okay, we brought in some nice defensive linemen, but we didn't bring in the kind of guys that people were talking about that we need to really dominate at this level. We brought in some guys that are doing a good job, and I think could be solid, but there's not one guy out there that sort of stands out as that next level, higher level kind of guy. If you look at Utah, what Utah got good, and they always had a guy on the defensive line was going to get drafted in the first 5 rounds, right? But we don't have that guy, so we still need to shore up our lines and our linebackers.
One stretch that might be forgotten because it happened in the first quarter and the end of the game was so wild. We got to go back to this stretch, William. This was a bizarre possession. Colorado State makes a 50-yard field goal, but there's roughing the snapper call. So they take the points off the board, which I would do the same thing if I'm CSU. If you're on the road at a rival, you got to try to score touchdowns, especially that early in the game. But they take the penalty. Shedeur Sanders almost gets a pick on that next play. And then the following play, he does get a pick, runs 80 yards down the field. He admitted that he was trying to high step at one point, and almost because of that, the defender almost caught up to him. And, you mentioned the penalty in the end zone. That was unfortunate, but that was a pretty awesome moment in the football game.
Yeah. The old, like I said, I keep repeating, I've been involved in this game in a long time. And, the old adage is you never take points off the board, man. And that's why, I've heard that saying ever since the late 70s when I first started playing football. You don't take points off the board, so there it is. I mean, that kind of sums up the reasoning behind that statement entirely. And what a swing that made and ultimately in the game, but it's also indicative of how many swings there are in the course of a football game, ups and downs. One team's on top and then it flips, and, unless it's truly a one-sided game. But that was a very interesting series, and the seeds of concern were already sowed at that point. It's like there's going to be a tighter game than we think. Although right at that moment I thought, well, okay, here this should bust it open, but we never really sort of seemed to capitalize on it.
All right, let's get into this. Henry Blackburn, clear cheap shot on Travis Hunter late in the first quarter. Ever since they put in this targeting rule with the ejections, I keep trying to get a grasp of what leads to an ejection, what doesn't. Like that play, a defenseless player right into the abdomen, where like the worst place you want to hit somebody in that position, and yet you get to stay in the game. I just don't. And LeBron James, of all people, is tweeting out the same thing that he doesn't understand.
Well, and I think what they've. So when it started out, you used to hear every time it was the key thing, and I remember one of our games, one of our safeties getting tossed was the defenseless player part was the key part of it at the beginning of targeting, and then it became more about the top of the helmet and targeting with the helmet and hitting the person in the helmet. But I think that they need to apply that rule more in terms of the defenseless player sort of thing. And the rules, even without that rule, he's out of bounds. The guy clearly headhunted and targeted him to put him out of the game. Clearly.
It's clear. It was, I mean, I get that Travis Hunter was having fun pregame and all that stuff, but it doesn't give you the right to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It was so egregious. My wife's like, "Don't you think he should be arrested for that?" And part of me says, "Yeah," because that was so blatant and out of line. And to think that they're proud of that, I don't know, man. It just leaves a sour, bitter taste in my mouth, And just the same thing with Cameron's hit on Shedeur, which was egregious and well after he threw the ball and clearly meant to hurt him. And I'm actually at a loss for words because I'm so shocked and outraged and angry about it. I almost don't give a damn about the outcome of the game when you see plays like that where they clearly meant to try to hurt our best players.
Travis Hunter, Coach Prime said is going to be out for a few weeks. Not super specific, I wouldn't imagine. I mean, he met with us right after the game, so probably didn't have a ton of firm details, but they had a staff member going out to check on him at the hospital. Not that Travis Hunter's listening to our podcast, but if anybody close to him is, best wishes to him because he didn't deserve to have to spend Saturday night at the hospital. That's for sure.
No, and I saw that I think his girlfriend tweeted that he was doing okay there and posted a picture. But, yeah, that's look, it's a tough game, man. It's a hand-to-hand combat game, and guys get hurt, and that's part of the game, and that's you live with that understanding and knowledge. But it's those out of bounds plays and those players not looking. Well, there was another play. What am I thinking of? I think it was a punt coverage or something where one of their guys blindsided one of our guys running down the field near the sidelines too, and I can't remember who was involved in that for our side. I think I want to say Weaver or something, but they were just doing that all throughout the game, and that's clearly what they were taught to do. So I don't know what else there is to say about it. It's egregious and it's ugly, and I don't know. I feel like if it was the NFL, there'd be a fine, but now it's like, hey, CSU, you guys suck, man.
Yeah, I haven't got the official word in terms of what Travis Hunter is dealing with, other than that he's at the hospital and is expected to miss a couple weeks. I've had a bruised spleen, a bruised liver playing basketball, and broken rib, and those are like the injuries that are the most painful. So I really hope he's doing okay, because just anything in that area, it just really makes it tough to get comfortable.
Yeah, and you watch it, and they really hit him right in the mid rib cage, and really compressed his side like that. It really was so dangerous. I don't know.
Well, let's move along. Shedeur Sanders had another turnover that he created, a forced fumble recovered by Derek McClendon. Shiloh actually graded out as CU's best defender by Pro Football Focus. I think I'd give him without question, my game ball for the game last night. Do you have another candidate in mind there? Cameron Sumlin Craig, another pick, second week in a row.
For defensively, or I mean, obviously, Shedeur, and I mean, maybe the whole Sanders
game ball for defense. It probably should be a Sanders family award.
Yeah.
Unless, whoa, hold up. We've gone way too long in this show without bringing up Michael Harrison. He's responsible for 14 of Colorado's final 17 points. He's a walk-on that was at receiver this spring, and now he's at tight end. And he's not your traditional hand in the ground mall guys type of tight end, but he came up big. He was targeted 7 times. Guess how many receptions he had? 7.
Yeah.
Not a bad day at the office for Mikey Harrison.
Well, and as they pointed out on the TV cast, he sees the defense and he adjusts and he gets himself into spots where he could be of assistance to Shedeur. He just doesn't blindly run the route that he's given. He adjusts and Shedeur sees him and looks for him. And what I wrote down in my notes about the game was, thank God to finally have an offensive coordinator and a quarterback who know how to use a tight end, because that's how you use a tight end. Everybody's focused on all these excellent wide receivers we got, and that's what they're focusing the defense on. And so you get that guy into seams and into holes in the defense, and you throw him the ball. He doesn't have to be, I remember back when we had Laviska, and people said, why would you waste time throwing the ball to tight end when you got Laviska on the field? Well, because that's how you make an offense work, because they're going to do everything they can to shut down your stars. And so you got to go to that other position. And that's what makes an offense really unpredictable and hard to defend. And now I think moving forward, everybody's got to keep an eye on Michael Harrison and where he is, because he's clearly a weapon. He's not going to go 90 yards, but he can certainly do 20, 30, or 40, and Mike, didn't he get both extra point attempts? Wasn't that one? Or no?
He scored 2 touchdowns and then a 2-point conversion.
Yeah. Okay. Weaver got the second 2-point conversion, but so I think he certainly gets a game ball. Who else sort of stood out to me was Mitchell at linebacker.
15 tackles. Yep.
Yeah. He was all over the place and just really stood out physically and athletically in terms of what he was doing out there. So I think Mitchell certainly gets a game ball for his play up front.
When Mitchell hits the opponent, it looks a little different than some other guys, right? Not quite, I don't think, to the Nate Landman level, but he's got more of that. The other player just kind of falls backwards and hits the turf really quick when he's making contact. It's a different type of physicality, to your point.
Right. And it's more physics, I guess, because he's got more speed and athleticism with the similar size, but he's fun to watch. So he, I think, shores up one linebacker position, but we're kind of struggling with that other one. I don't know. But he stood out to me as on defense as a guy who really got things done. I'll tell you the other thing that sort of struck me, we struggled at corner without Travis, it seemed to me.
And Carter Stoutmeyer, who I know he's a true freshman, but he actually looked pretty good in 20 snaps against Nebraska. He was out as well. So, they were down. Kendrick Breedlove was put in there for quite a bit more action.
Yeah. And we did, they kept running those crossing routes and dragging. The one guy on their team, I think, that stood out as equal to our guys is that big receiver, 14.
Torrey Horton, yeah.
Yeah, and they kept targeting him and they kept dragging him across the middle on those various levels of crossing routes, and we just didn't ever adjust and have an answer for that.
So it's 4th and goal from the 2 early in the 4th quarter, and Colorado decides to go with the field goal. They take the points, and they cut the lead to 28-20 with 7:33 left. Be honest, when that decision was made, because Coach Prime said that he was kind of torn about what to do in that situation, but he decided to take the points. Were you angry in that circumstance? Because you're starting to do the math in your head and looking at the clock at that point.
No, I wasn't. I don't know. I think you try to do the math of it was 28-17, right? We took the 3 and it's 28-20. So whether it's 3 or it's 7, let's say maybe I'm not smart enough to have done the math in my head at that moment, but if you let's see, 17, 24, you would have to have the extra, you'd have to have the 2-point conversion even to get within range to have a tying field goal. So I think it's a reasonable choice, and there are cards out there that have every situation on it. Do you kick it or do you do something else? And I think that was a reasonable decision, and I think he had faith in his defense that they'd get a stop and we get the ball back, and I think really he had faith in his son, that quarterback, to get the job done. So I don't know, it's a lot different thing if it's 4 minutes or 3 minutes, but 7 minutes is a long time in football, man. And 8 points is not an insurmountable amount to overcome, as we obviously showed. It's not like I think it was important. He got us within 1 score, is what the field goal gives you. Okay, if you go for it and you don't get it, you're done. But if you put those points on the board now, you can still win the thing with 1 touchdown and a 2-point, tie it up. At any rate, you understand what I mean. But I think it's, people can debate it back and forth, but I think it was a smart thing to do.
In just his second collegiate start, his first start this year, Braden Fowler Nicolosi looked pretty darn good out there. I'm anxious to see what he does going forward. If this was just kind of a mirage where things came together, like remember in that Oregon State comeback in the second half, it's like sometimes things can just kind of align and the guy looks really good. Right. But man, last night he looked pretty scrappy. It wasn't always the prettiest thing to watch him play quarterback, but he got the ball where it needed to be, on target a lot of the time.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think he had an.
Are you just not going to give any credit to any CSU player? I guess you did with Torrey Horton, but he was a stud last night.
Yeah, that Cameron guy, I think he should be in jail today. But
okay.
He was certainly their best defensive player, and really was a problem for our offense that we couldn't handle. Their quarterback lost them the game. There ain't no way around it. I mean, he threw the pick 6. He threw the that last interception to Trevor Woods. So while he did a lot of good things, he also did a lot of very bad things that hurt them. I mean, I would say the guy who it was number 14 who really stood out for them on offense. And
and Torrey Horton, number 14, who you're referencing, he also threw a 30-yard touchdown pass that was beautiful as well.
Right on the money, holy crap!
It was hard to be too mad about that. It was like, holy, you just kind of you tip your cap a little bit,
Yeah, I watched that guy and I'm like, wow, that guy is the next level talent for sure. And he was actually fun to watch, and he wasn't a jerk, and he wasn't chipping, he wasn't doing crappy things. But that touchdown, he
wasn't the guy that shoved Shiloh into the goalpost. I thought that's who did that. I thought so. I'd have to go back and look.
I couldn't tell. I think
everybody in our comments is going to be correcting one of us now.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. I don't have the luxury of being able to go back and look at it. So he might have been, but when you watch a guy play a game like that, as a person who loves football, it's hard not to have respect for him. I didn't. The quarterback didn't blow me away. I don't know what to tell you. He cost them that game. That those couple of those picks were, the pick 6 to Shiloh was egregious, man. I mean, there's no way you throw that ball. I don't know. I mean, I've never played the position, so, and I've always been very clear to say I don't know a darn thing about quarterback, but Shedeur Sanders wouldn't do that, And all of a sudden, something flashed into my head. You talked about who you've watched that was like Shedeur in those moments. John Elway was that guy.
Oh yeah.
On the 2-yard line, 98 yards ago. I think his famous quote is, "Got him right where we want him." And is Shedeur a John Elway? He doesn't have that arm, but he's got all the rest of those intangibles. So
well, he's certainly cool as a cucumber in those situations.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
That's really fun to just watch somebody in those pressure situations, and it doesn't look like their heart rate even goes up. It's pretty fun to see that.
Right. Yeah. So I just sort of switched gears there, but that's who popped into my head as you were asking me about the other quarterback. Um, I don't know. I just think he cost him too much to give him too many superlatives for his play. Not trying to be.
Alejandro Mata, he made both of his field goal attempts in the fourth quarter, including a 41-yarder. Any takes here on the kicker situation?
Well, I'm gonna pull a prime on you. Like, wait. Alejandro Mata, that guy that came from Jackson State, that guy, kid. Wait, the guy that can't kick more than 5 yards? No, that can't be right. You got the wrong guy. Was that a reasonable prime uh,
Who
interpretation?
I mean, I don't know if people have been coming at Mata like that to
Well,
warrant that reaction, but I guess
back,
over the summer, yeah.
yeah,
Huh?
back in the summer and the spring, people were pretty harsh on the guy. And I didn't get involved with it because I don't care. As
Zay
you
Weaver and Jimmy Horn Jr., both with the touchdown catch.
Yeah.
And Horn's obviously coming with 38 seconds left in regulation. We all
Well,
suffered through one of the worst FBS seasons in the history of FBS football with Colorado football in 2022. It wasn't quite that bad down at USF, but Zay Weaver and Jimmy Horn Jr. were not getting team success. They were finding individual success. And so it's been a cool story to see them both come here and it really pay off, their decision to come out to Colorado.
Yeah, and Jimmy Horn is he and Bishop Thomas are two of my favorites because they're just so funny. And Jimmy Horn is dry funny, It's like he's the guy that was quoting that Ice Cube movie when Prime was doing his talk last week. He said they didn't ask what happened to the last security guards. I don't know if you know that reference. I think it was I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's Ice Cube line. But and he was just sort of back there, and he just sort of dryly puts that out there, and I love that kid. But he and Weaver are warriors out there, wide receiver, and I that on Jimmy Horn's touchdown, that kid's still looking for his jockstrap because that move he put on that kid. Oh my God, I had to watch that a few times because he made that guy look silly, and then his effort to get into the end zone there because I was just like, thank God he didn't get tackled at the one, and we got to deal with that situation. But I love those two guys, and I like to see them having a success. Like Trevor Woods coming up big again, right?
Yeah.
With that pick in the end zone. It was in the end zone, right? I think, or no,
it was. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like that guy, he's the one I wouldn't say he got burned on that touchdown to the tight end. I mean, it's hard to imagine a quarterback throwing a better ball than and I can't remember the kid's name, number 14 on that, right over the top, and Woods had great coverage, so it's not like he got burned, but to come back and stick his head in there and get that interception was huge. So
you said you love the personality of Bishop, and who else were we just talking about? My brain,
Jimmy Horn.
Jim Horn. Yeah, that's right.
A little bit scrambled right now.
Did you get a chance to watch Shedeur Sanders in the post-game press conference?
Yeah, I did.
That he's a lock for best interview. Every year, everybody that covers the team gets to vote on the player they feel is the best interview. I think he's already clinched it. He's hilarious.
Well, I love how he came in, and he got that big smile, man. He got that big megawatt smile, and he's as different from his brother as he could be. And yet the love between them was obvious as they're sitting there, right? And the rivalry between them sitting there at that table was funny too. And I thought the really funny part was little Mata was just kind of like, I'll just sit there quietly between the two of them. But it was just very interesting to me, the difference in the personalities of, because Shedeur is not a get up there and talk to the media guy. It doesn't look like to me. You see a lot more of this than I do, but he does it because he needs to, and he's good at it when he needs to. But Shiloh's like his dad, man. He gets to the table, and I'm the guy here. Hey, right here. You talking to me? Thank you. And he's just funny, and he's got that personality, and I don't know, that I'm not sure anything's quite happened to Boulder, Colorado in its entire history, like the Sanders family, and it is so good. It's so good for us. It really is.
And it's great they're as talented as they are. So, like,
Right,
if somebody even just says nepotism, you backhand them with one of these
right,
because, come
right,
on, these are top level players out there.
right. And then that's like they've earned their spots, and I don't know. I'm not sure I've seen three consecutive games from a quarterback like these three from Shedeur. Uh, and like I said at the beginning of this thing, any team that's got him behind center has got a shot. So, yeah.
Well, up next is a trip to Oregon. William, I'm excited to go out there. I've actually got some gosh, I can't even speak at this point. So I'm glad we're ending the show. I'm bringing my daughter out with me because I've got family out there, and family's going to watch her while I cover that game out in Eugene. It is going to kick off at 1:30 Mountain Time, 12:30 Pacific Time on ABC, another nationally televised game. Real quick, William, any thoughts just in terms of starting conference play? We've kind of talked about some of the issues. Slow starts, they got to get that fixed.
Yeah.
The run game, they got to figure out something there. Defensively, just a little bit more consistency. Now, that's a group that when the game's on the line, you feel like that defense is going to come up and make the play they need to, but just a little bit more consistency out of them. Anything else that you're feeling as the Buffs look ahead to conference play?
I would just caution people again to not read too much into what happened last night. There's a lot of things going on there. One thing I would say, I'll stand up and own the fact that I was wrong about that game, and I don't know. I'm not ready to give CSU a lot of credit. I think we made a lot of mistakes and had some struggles in some areas. But that was a lot tighter game than I expected. Now, that doesn't mean that we all got to adjust our sights and we can't win this next game. But we need to make some significant improvements. We need to address some issues to get there. And I think the other positives that comes out of that game last night is it's a wake up call to the team to get their mind right and start working on some of these little things that make a difference in the game. So I don't know. See how the week develops. Oregon hasn't really played anybody yet, so we'll see what they're about. But they're man, I don't think it's blasphemy to say that they've got a more talented team than we do. Does that make them a better team? Not necessarily. So, we have to go out there and play the game, see what happens.
All right, William, I'm about to go face plant and get some sleep in bed. I appreciate you for taking time out. I know you're busy with work as well. 3-0. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I don't think, I will point out I predicted it, but I don't think a lot of people thought we would be at this point, regardless of how ugly it might have been last night. But, man, from where we were back at the end of December to 3-0 now is pretty exciting stuff.
All right. Thanks again, William, and thanks everybody out there for tuning in as always.